Jinn. I've never experienced anything paranormal, but my parents have. I'm going to share one of those stories here. My mom said she experienced something she couldn't explain sometime in the 80s when she was in high school. This was in Chittagong, Bangladesh. My grandmother's house is on a mountain. My mom lived with her siblings on the second floor apartment of their building. They were all listening to music. In our culture, it's generally considered unsafe to play music at night because locals believe it attracts ghosts and spirits nearby. My mom said they were all sitting around the circular dining table, eagerly listening to a famous flute player on the radio. She decided to get up and go to the bathroom across the hall. As she proceeded to walk, within 10 seconds, she was on the ground. She felt a huge slap across the face and fell to the ground in front of the bathroom. Her brothers saw her and ran to help her up. They could not lift her up. They both fell next to her. It was shocking because my mom was a skinny girl at the time and barely 5 feet tall. My uncles were bodybuilders and couldn't even lift her arm above the ground. My mom said that as she was laying there, she could see a figure in front of her. He had multiple faces and had a hot, foul-smelling breath. She said his face was so dirty and kept changing shape. She said the whole thing lasted 5 minutes at most. Immediately after my uncles fell, my aunt started freaking out and did what anyone would have done at the time. She prayed. She recited the Ayatul Kursi and immediately everyone could get up. They all immediately turned the radio off and that was it. No more music at night, I guess. Haunted by a demon from a Ouija board. In HS, a group of friends and I purchased a Ouija board to play with. We decided my house was the best, so the 5 of us sat around the board in my bedroom one Friday night and began to play. The board we got also was glow in the dark, adding to the spookiness. The first time was uneventful. The only entity we contacted saying its name was no one. The second time playing was much more memorable and terrifying. It was only my close friend and I in my room playing in the dark. Music playing softly on my stereo. We asked the basic questions and soon noticed our breath was visible. We were freezing. Now my house was in the woods and my room was notoriously cold during winter, so I turned my space heater on and we continued. No one appeared again and still our breath hung in the air despite the heater going full blast. The radio began to jump stations and the volume raised and lowered. Loud static filled the room, so I shut it off. The stereo jumped back on with lights flashing and country music blaring, even though we hadn't been listening to country. Unnerved but excited, my friend and I laughed, asking no one more questions. Feverishly, the plaque flew across the board, sometimes right out of our hands. Besides predicting some minor events, we laughed off the encounter and the Ouija board was put in my closet for safekeeping. The nuance had worn off, or at least not one wanted to play the board anymore. Some had bad dreams or just bad feelings. Meanwhile, I felt a dark presence following me, almost like an eerie shadow that I could feel but not see. One night, while in bed, the doors of my closet burst open, the radio blared on, and my lights flickered. This happened a few more times on various nights before my paranoia got the better of me and I began to look up how to dispose of a Ouija board. Obviously, we had released something sinister. I learned burning it was a bad idea, so my next option was to bury it deep in my parents' woods. So one rainy afternoon, when no one was home, I took the board and a shovel and hiked deep into the forest behind my house. I dug a hole the best I could and buried the board deep in the mud. I had terrible nightmares for weeks and dreamt that I would come home from school to find a muddy board on my bed, but no such thing happened. My closet would still burst open and the radio turn on randomly. My room stayed freezing cold most of the year. For years I felt haunted and followed by something dark. It has subsided over the years, but I still have encounters. TVs turn on or my things go missing, then suddenly reappear. The encounters feel much less sinister than before, so I think whatever or whoever no one wasn't something good. I think the board opened me up to the encounters, but only the first felt dark, or dare I say evil. I have found as long as I tell them I know that they're there, the events stop. I'm not sure what I encountered or if it still follows me now. My encounter with a negative spirit. So, I'm a practicing witch. I have been for several years, and one of my first spells was one of the ones that I could never forget. I was trying to do a love spell, which includes bringing your energy out to get that loving energy attracted towards you. However, I was in a really dark place at the time with depression. So I believe that what I sent out was negative energy, and I think I got it back. That night, after I did the spell, something felt different in my room. It felt heavier in the air. I was on my computer in bed, and all of a sudden, I felt a burning sensation going up my arm. When I looked, there were fresh scratches. I took a pic, but it was on my old phone from about 3 years ago, and I can't find it. I wish I could to show everyone, but I checked everywhere on my bed on how it could happen. Even though my arm was perfectly still in front of me and none of my animals was in the room or gone near me that day, I couldn't find anything sharp around that could have done it, so I was freaked out. Later that night, my dog and cat came into my room and sat on the end of my bed, and then all of a sudden, they were staring at my doorway, growling and hissing, which they never done before, so I was a bit confused. And then they both ran out the room. They weren't fighting or anything, it was like something scared them off. I was weirded out. When I fell asleep, I had a horrible nightmare of dead bodies in a room with a scary-looking plague doctor standing in the middle of them, and I could hear whispers around me going on about a murderous plague doctor, which I guess was the one I was seeing. I could also smell rotting flesh and weirdly lavender. When I woke up, there were loads of flies all over me, which never happened beforehand. I screamed and flicked them all away. I was trying to smell my room and my house to see if anything was rotting, and that's why I had flies all over me and could smell rotting flesh in my dreams. But now, being awake, I couldn't smell anything. I even had a shower to make sure it wasn't me. The heaviness in my room was still strong, almost like something was watching me. I was freaked out and my animals were still acting up, staring at my door, hissing and barking, and I just felt drained. For several nights, I had the same nightmare and woke up with flies all over me. I checked and checked again to see if anything was causing the flies to come, and washing myself more and more, but I couldn't find anything, and they kept coming back. This happened for 5 days in a row. I had enough at this point, and I was convinced it was some sort of negative spirit. That day, I cleansed my room and whole house the best way I could with my practice. And when I started the cleansing, more scratches ended up on my leg. I felt like it definitely didn't want to go. When I completed my ritual and cleaning for banishing, everything felt calmer and lighter. My animals stopped acting strange. No more scratches, no more flies, no more of the feeling I was being watched, and definitely no more nightmares, and I didn't feel drained. I was curious about plague doctors after that, and found out they used flowers such as lavender in their beaks to mask the smell of the plague, and my jaw dropped. Only some of my close family and my boyfriend knows about this, as it is very personal and very real to me, but I thought I'd share it now, after all this time. Prismatic horror. What do you think horror is? Is it losing a loved one, maybe facing a childhood fear, or is it an anxiety that coils itself in your stomach and festers inside your most vulnerable points? Do you think that's what horror is? Do you think you know what it's like to experience the kind of horror to make your hair streak white and age your face and peel away the protective layers of your sanity? You don't know shit unless you saw a pale head's blood red eyes look at you from out of your girlfriend's private parts and start to creep its head out from there, smiling while it does it and saying all the while, "It's too tight, Coltrane," in a weepy child's voice. You don't know shit unless you woke up in the night and stared into the darkness of your room and found a pale being slitting open its chest and bending its ribs into a makeshift set of teeth as its intestines flicked out of it in a parody of a tongue. You don't know shit unless you killed the people closest to you to spare them from a fate so much more gruesome than death, or what the darkest imagination can think of. You don't know shit at all, and you should be thanking God Almighty you live in such ignorance, in such a state of normalcy, that you don't have to wake up thinking that in this moment you are going to have your soul eaten by some pale monstrosity from hell itself. Or maybe where they come from is a place more stygian than hell itself, because even in hell there's rules to follow, some semblance of order and a hierarchy. From what I have seen, there is no reason or rhyme with them. They have no purpose other than to exist and consume everything, even each other, even the fucking dark itself. I've seen them with their gaping mouths, sucking in the darkness like a whale would with krill or shrimp. It doesn't make the darkness go away though, it only makes it that more soul-sucking black, that even the startling paleness of their skin only glimmers in it. They are the locus of a world that never experienced the grace of God's touch, that never knew anything beyond playing in the flesh of us humans. I called it beyond sick when I first experienced this corruption of flesh with my girlfriend. Beyond nightmarish, but that was then, and this is now, a full 5 years, 8 months, and 22 days after my first contact with these pale beings. Every day has passed by so fucking achingly slow, you could fit decades in seconds, and then drag those seconds out when the sun goes down, and if you could sleep, maybe those seconds will speed back up again. But I don't sleep anymore. I could see them in my dreams, even when I close my eyes for a minute. They are there, in all their evil glory, twisting, mutating, ripping their bodies apart, and putting on pieces from others that don't fit, but they stick it on anyways, so they could have something to eat or play with, or just so as a means beyond my understanding. It's all beyond understanding, all of it. And I've lost my mind in the first week of this horror. I started to hear voices that whispered that they were going to rape my soul into despair, and that even though I killed my friends and family, that they are in their world suffering so much. I started to rage at the smallest things and would break my hands on whatever I could hit. I want to say I started not to care about anything anymore, but I did. I cared that I stay alive long enough that I don't get my soul sucked into their world and have it spend eternity there among the pale things. Nikola Tesla once said that you will live to see man-made horrors beyond imagination. That's true to a degree, but he never lived long enough to experience that there are things beyond this world that put any murderer or rapist or some perverted degenerate to shame. That there are things lurking in the darkness of your room that wait for you to sleep before invading your dreams and peeking into what secrets you keep in your mind, while they also peel back your sanity bit by bit. He didn't live long enough to know that, but I guess he knows better now, where he is, maybe in some better place you could call heaven. Heaven, it must exist, because for every single negative, there's a positive force to equalize it. It's in nature. It's in our media. It's in our interactions with the people around us. There is good and evil, but so far, I've seen only evil. Enough of it to last eternity. Enough to know to treasure every day on earth as if it would be my last before I venture into their world. My Jesus, that scares me so much. I know if I go there, that my soul would be desecrated beyond belief, and I think I may even turn into one of those pale things. It happened to my girlfriend and my best friend. They had their bodies twisted and torn apart and reshaped, and there was so much blood, and their organs didn't fit anymore in their new bodies. When I killed the thing that came out of my girlfriend's private parts, I picked up her still but slow beating heart on the floor and tried to put it back into her chest. I tried so damn hard to put it back, but it just wouldn't fit into her cavity because there was already a new face starting to appear from it, and it was trying to eat her heart. And the thing about it was that it was her new pale face on her new slowly turning pale body. I loved her so much, I was shocked into a near unconsciousness because I didn't know what to do to save her. How can I save her with her body like that? But I knew how. Deep down, but rising and burning in my veins like a damn good whiskey, I knew what to do. I had to tear her apart again and do it right this time, so she couldn't exist like that anymore. I had to cut the arms from off her bare breast. I had to finish cutting her head off. I had to stab that new face of hers again and again and again until it stopped those sickening excited moaning sounds. And so I did that all night long and into the next day. And when it was finally over, I started to cry tears of blood, and then I lost my mind. But it did not spare me from anything. It instead made me aware of everything. The blood roaring in my ears, my racing heartbeat, the rats crawling in the apartment walls, waiting to feast on my girlfriend. It made me aware of them, watching me and teasing me with the prospect of their unholy union with me. Even through all of this, I never once considered the thought of suicide, and I never will. I'm too angry to chicken out and let them have my body to play with. Who knows, I might even expedite my union with them if I did that. The rage is always there since I killed the rest of my family and friends and spared them this pale horror. Always has been, and I cannot count how many times I have killed these pale beings. But they always come back in tens when I manage to dismember 5 of them, and they grin with their sickening pointed and misshapen teeth, and the voices whisper, "He's getting tired, we are going to win." And then I'm beset with a wave of despair. I'll never get used to this, but I'm at a point where I've gotten bolder with my actions and the direction of my life. Sometimes I try to go out into the world and visit that wonderful normalcy beyond my reach. Sometimes I bring women home and sleep with them, and for a moment forget where I am and who I am and what's sitting there in the dark. But that's only for a moment, a nice wonderful moment. Home. Such a strange word to say after all this. It doesn't even bring a sense of anything anymore. All I feel is a tiredness that sleep won't fix. My Lord, am I so tired, but I can't sleep. Not anymore. That state of hyper-awareness never left me, and I refuse to dream about them, and I refuse to close my eyes and wake up in their world. I refuse to die. I refuse to have my flesh perverted beyond belief. I refuse to give up now after so long fighting this. I don't know if this will ever end. I don't think it will. They know me, my past, my memories, my life, and my loved ones all too well. They have an interest in me, and they will never leave me alone. They'll always watch me, day in and day out, and plot on what to do with me at that current time. But I'll never concede. I'll never let go of the saw and axe in my rough and broken hands. I'll never let go of the rage. One other thing before I go. I haven't told you her name or my best friend's name. That's funny. I can't even remember them now. It seems so long ago. I barely even remember my name. But that's to be expected after dealing with this. I don't know how this started, and I don't know how it will end, but I know I won't be the last. They are patient, and they pick up and stay with their targets for a long time, before and after revealing themselves. It has no rhyme or reason. There is no semblance of order. It's just a random pick of choice. A faith with no control whatsoever. Nothing is fair, and the horror is constant. But somewhere in the darkness is an undying and courageous light of life that cannot be put out by even the strongest. Somewhere in the darkness is an end and a beginning in the gates of Elysian.